cause I'm an original pagan, yeah. But I remember the days.
Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse. And this is Adventures in Pagan Media. And speaking of adventures in pagan media, I have in fact had quite a few. Let's discuss them beginning back at the beginning in the 1970s. So, I have been pagan my whole life. My mother Leveda was the head of the Corellian tradition from 1966 to 1979. She raised me with Corellian ideas, but also allowed me to explore anything else I was interested in. I made my Corellian dedication at Mabon of 1975, and became a first-degree Corellian priest at Soan of 1976. So, I was doing pagan and pagan-themed artwork and writing very early in my life. Lady Bitterwind, who served for many years as Corellian First Elder, was deeply involved with fan fiction, doing both artwork and writing, especially for Star Trek fandom, but also other science fiction fandoms. She was also a devoted consumer of pagan magazines, which at that time were produced in essentially the same manner as science fiction fanzines. Our collection of Circle magazine begins from issue 2, although we later added an issue 1 for the sake of completeness. We were members of the Pagan Spirit Alliance, which later gave birth to the Pagan Spirit Gathering. However, I was only doing little bits of public artwork at this time because I was still in school, and so much was happening on the ground with the tradition growing and evolving. Most of the artwork and writing that I did in these years was for personal and local use. In the early 1980s, I was in college training for a career as a commercial artist, a profession that presently died to be replaced by the graphic artist, which is very different. Instead, I became a professional psychic, working mainly on weekends and having my weekdays free. I was still hoping for a future in the arts, but I feared that my pagan religion and my sexual orientation would both make a corporate future precarious. So I started to think in terms of freelance art and the fine arts. Lady Crystal and Lady Bitterwind suggested that I should consider submitting art and writing to the pagan magazines we enjoyed reading, much as Lady Bitterwind had been doing with science fiction art. I had myself been doing work in science fiction fandom for a few years, much of it pagan-themed, but had not yet entered the pagan press as such. There was no money in any of this, of course, but my work as a psychic met that need quite well at the time. And so the artwork I did out of love, but still with a hope of a professional future. I sent off a number of query letters to pagan magazines offering my artwork and/or writing, and including samples of my artwork. A query letter of this sort, in case you are unaware, is a prehistoric form of communication that was actually written by hand on paper, or even typed on paper, and put into actual envelopes to be physically delivered, if you can imagine that such a state of affairs was ever the case. I did not understand how rare good pagan artists were in the pagan press at that time, and found myself highly in demand overnight, or as overnight as things were before the internet. The first pagan magazine to publish my artwork was The Unicorn, published and edited by Paul Baerl of the Rowan Tree Church. The Unicorn would also use more of my artwork than any other pagan magazine, featuring it in every episode until the end of the decade, and even some in the 90s. Circle Network News, produced by Selena Fox of Circle Network, was the first pagan magazine to publish my writing. I also worked with many other magazines in those years, including the Crone Papers, the Crucible, the Grave Robbers Gazette, Harvest, Panegyria, Seasonal Silver, Stardust Salamander, and many others, which today are mostly only memories. It should be noted that all of these magazines were works of love, created by hand, typing the content on paper, hand laying out the master copy using things like rubber cement or tape, and then photocopying and hand assembling all the copies. The most professional magazines like Circle were actually professionally printed on newsprint, but they were the exception. By 1986, I was involved with a small publisher called Mystic Link, who published fanzines but aspired to one day become a full-blown publishing house. My mother had been inspired to write a small book at this time in reaction to the rise of the New Right. It was called The 5 Mystic Secrets of the Great Pagan Masters, and was the first writing to my knowledge to deal with specifically Corellian ideas, although she used the older name of the tradition in the text, Nativist. She also used the pseudonym Elizabeth Greenwood. I did artwork and layout for the book, and it was published by Mystic Link. This was received very well and led to a number of other projects. The most successful was the Wheel of Hecate magazine, whose first issue appeared at Candlemas of 1987. Contributors to the Wheel of Hecate included myself, my wife Winter, Lady Crystal, my mother writing as Elizabeth Greenwood, Lady Bitterwind, Paul Bayerl, Grey Cat, Donna Lionrose, L. Edward Lawrence, Bill Hines, and Silver Ravenwolf, although at that time she was still either Silver Raven or Raven Wolf, having not yet combined the names, and many other contributors. At Samhain of 1987, I was honored with a Silver Salamander Award for excellence in pagan journalism. Also in these years, I made a number of television appearances related to my career as a psychic, and I began working on an extremely low-budget movie based on a book series by Donna Lionrose. I reasoned that if we could produce low-tech magazines, I could make a low-tech movie in much the same way. Unfortunately, the movie never got made because of events in my personal life. I continued all of this, creating a vast amount of artwork until 1989. Much of that artwork was later republished in things like Reverend Don's Super Omnibus of Incantations and Invocations for All Occasions. Within a few months of each other in 1989, my first marriage ended in divorce and my beloved mother died, triggering a year of formal mourning as she was a past head of tradition. I stepped back from my activities in the pagan press thinking that I was just taking a break, but in reality this brought to an end my first period of adventures in pagan media. Following my mother's death, I moved to Chicago. This brought me in contact with many new people and a whole new pagan community that I had never met. I had often wondered during my years in the pagan press why none of the magazines I was working with or any of the subscribers to the Wheel of Hecate were based in Chicago. What I found was that the Chicago pagan community, while including several major figures, was very self-contained. One of the people who I met at this time who would have a major effect on my life was Ed Hubbard, who became my best friend and collaborator. I quickly became involved in a number of projects with Ed, including Psychic Services Incorporated, Psychic Chicago Magazine, and Psychic Chicago Radio. From then till now, Ed and I have been involved in almost everything the other does, and nothing that follows from this point would have happened, or at least happened in the same way, without that relationship. About 18 months after I moved to Chicago, I was severely injured in a fall that left me bedridden in the short term and took many years to fully recover from. This greatly changed the direction of my life and left me much more focused on the Chicago community and the real-time events there than the national pagan press that I had formerly been so heavily involved with. At Samhain of 1991, Ed and I joined together to found the Church of Gaia, later known as Holy City Temple, and now as the Universal Temple of Gaia. This was a combined project of the Newcastle Society and the Corellian tradition, and remains strong some 30 years later. It was in this temple that the standardized degree lessons for the Corellian tradition would be written. During these years, I served as art director for Psychic Chicago magazine. Ed was hosting Psychic Chicago Radio and interviewing most of the leadership of the Chicago community, including, among others, Donna Kohlschultz, Dina Buddha, Rael Bassan, Jim Babekis and Anita Babekis, and figures such as Herman Enderle, who had played a seminal role in the Chicago community. Ed was also working in the offices of the Parliament of the World's Religions, which was to be held in 1993. Despite Ed and me trying to tell them about it, the majority of the Chicago community did not believe that the Parliament was a real thing until just before it happened. But when Parliament did happen over Labor Day weekend of 1993, it transformed the Chicago community. Using his experience in the offices of the Parliament, and as a stage manager during the event, as well as his connections from the years of Psychic Chicago Radio, and a charge from Olivia Robertson of the Fellowship of Isis, Ed created the Chicago Pagan Leadership Conference, which brought most of Chicago's pagan and Wiccan groups together in a powerful mutual alliance that would last for years. The first Pagan Leadership Conference was held in January of 1994, with 2 more following that same year. The Chicago Pagan Leadership Conference then became its own separate organization and continued in that form until 1998. For me, the biggest thing to come out of the Chicago Pagan Leadership Conferences was the Roundtable magazine. Beginning in 1994, I acted as editor for the Roundtable magazine, and Ed acted as publisher. The Roundtable was a monthly community magazine covering local activities of the Chicago pagan community, as well as national news and articles of interest by local pagan writers. I used all of my experience in the pagan press from the previous decade to make the Roundtable magazine the best magazine it could be, and it was very popular. At the height of the Roundtable magazine, over 30 public temples advertised in each issue, as well as many local pagan and pagan-friendly businesses. The Roundtable magazine was also the venue for the Sci-Team comic, a metaphysical cartoon strip with characters based on local personalities from the Chicago pagan community. Each month, people would look to see whether they were in the comic strip and whether they loved or hated me that month. It was great fun. Characters like Susie Sunshine, the goddess Bovina, and Nazi Patra, Queen of Denial, will always bring a smile to my face if for different reasons in each case. The second major effect of the Pagan Leadership Conferences was that we became active online at what was still an early point in the Internet's existence. On November 11th of 1998, Ed established the Daily Spell e-list, originally at onelist.com. The Daily Spell was a daily electronic newspaper where Ed offered our new degree lessons straight to your email inbox. Also in 1998, I started doing what would come to be known as Chancellor's Chat, a weekly chat room, also originally at onelist.com, that I still hold every Monday night to this day. Our entry onto the Internet greatly accelerated everything we were doing and opened the world up to us as never before. During this time, Ed was also doing telepathic radio, which ran from 1998 to 2000, with me as a frequent guest. The most memorable show I was involved with was called Ouija Board, Psychic Tool or Gateway to Hell, 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 in which I and Howard Heim argued the pros and cons of the Ouija board. It was a memorable program. This was also a time of big events in Chicago. For many years we hosted the New Witches' Ball annually. Although it began small, this event came to host crowds in the hundreds, topping out at over 1,000 attendees at its height. In 1998, Ed began hosting the Pagan Expos, which would ultimately draw crowds of over 2,000 people. As we entered the new century, all of these things came to a crescendo that created our greatest achievement, Witch School. The Daily Spell was so successful and the Corellian degree lessons so well received that Ed decided we needed a full-blown school to handle the demand. Ed recruited Lisa Tuitt, who had formerly worked as a programmer for a major corporation, to build the site, using the lessons that we had been teaching through the Daily Spell, and an automated system that would allow our tiny volunteer mentor force to handle the very large volume of students. The school opened on September 4th, 2001. September 4th was chosen as the date because it was Corellian Founding Day and therefore an auspicious date, and indeed it was. There were over 2,000 students on the very first day, brought over mostly from the Daily Spell system, but quickly expanding. My niece Sherry would later say that she would never again take slick websites at their face value after watching Witch School be built and run on a shoestring by 3 people in a corner of the kitchen of my apartment in Chicago. Witch School is now 21 years old and has been through several iterations and numerous adventures. None of these would ever have been possible, however, without the hundreds of people who make the school work. Witch School may have originally been built by 3 people in a kitchen, but it has been staffed by hundreds of mostly volunteer administrators and mentors whose efforts have sustained it all these years. I could never name all of them, but some of the most important have included Mary Ann Kay, Virginia Powell, Wendy LaJoy, Carla Summers, Rhianna Marie, and today, Laurie Denman and Lori Blackman. But even if I can't name everyone here, we are grateful to all those who have helped to make Witch School what it is. Probably the biggest adventure in these years was moving the Witch School headquarters from Chicago to Hoopeston, Illinois in 2003. We were at this point producing a range of books and related items that required a shipping office, and we found this difficult to maintain in Chicago. If we'd known what was waiting for us in Hoopeston, we might not have been so anxious to move there. Immediately after we announced the impending move, Hoopeston became the site of conservative Christian protests. We came down to attend a Hoopeston City Council meeting on July 3, 2003, in the hope of assuaging local fears. Instead, we found the meeting flooded with an ugly mob near the brink of violence. The whole idea would have ended that night, except we later found out that the mob had been bussed in from outside of the community, and that many local residents actually welcomed our coming. Nonetheless, the opposition was entrenched and would ultimately wear us down over time. But in the short run, the move was great for us.
This is our building. Welcome to Witch School. This is everybody's inside working away. Yeah, it's a big 13,000 square foot warehouse that we're trying to convert over. We gotta get some paint on it. Next to it are the train tracks. This is one of the oldest spots. This is the center point in town. Right behind it is the 00 point. This is Main Street from across the street, what it looks like going down our street. As you see, we have a lot of open space around us. Little birdie.
One enduring media project that started during the Hoopeston years was the Correllian Times. The Correllian Times was established in 2003 with then First Priestess Crystal Highcorrell as founding editor. Later, Archpriestess Wendy LaJoy would take over as editor and run the Correllian Times for many years. After a hiatus in publication, the Correllian Times was revived in 2018 by current editor, Reverend Sir Stacy Blair, who publishes the Correllian Times in several languages each month. Another enduring project that started during the Hoopeston years was the Mini-Spell Project. This involved writing hundreds of short spells for all manner of purpose. I wrote the bulk of the mini-spells, but Ed Hubbard, Crystal Highcorrell, and Jason Highcorrell also wrote for the project. For several years, these were sold along with small candles as exactly what the name implies, small, simple spells. Each mini-spell included a line saying that they came from Reverend Don's Super Omnibus of Incantations and Invocations for All Occasions, a book that did not actually exist. Until, years later, Marianne Kay actually compiled the Super Omnibus from the mini-spells and from many years of my artwork. It was a monumental work on Marianne's part. Printed out, the complete Super Omnibus of Incantations and Invocations for All Occasions weighed a full 6 pounds. In April of 2009, Witch School added a Ning-based social site called Witch School Social, for students to gather socially and exchange blogs, pictures, and so forth. Later, this site changed again to become a new platform for the daily spell. The Ning site lasted for 10 years, closing in March of 2022. One of the greatest media projects that we have done was also started during these years. Pagan's Tonight Radio, the voice of the pagan world, began broadcasting on September 18, 2009. Edward started Pagan's Tonight Radio and at first was its only broadcaster, doing nightly broadcasts single-handedly. Over time, other hosts were added and a wide range of shows developed. Pam Kelly was brought in as station manager and the roster of hosts grew. All told, Pagan's Tonight Radio had more than 100 hosts during its years of operation, with multiple shows broadcast nightly. In addition to Ed and myself, some of these hosts included Selena Fox, Oberon Zell, Jason Mankey, and many, many more. Some of Pagan Tonight's most popular shows included The Pagan Priestess Show, The Pagan Priest Show, The Pagan Science Hour, and The Correllian Family Hour. There were also many specials that ran on Pagan's Tonight Radio, including special reports from Patrick McCullum on his prison ministry campaign, and prominent memorials for a number of important pagan leaders, including Olivia Robertson, Carl Weschke, Isaac Bonowitz, and Morning Glory Zell, that included reminiscences from family and friends, some of which appear nowhere else. After 10 years, Pagans Tonight Radio ceased nightly broadcasting in 2019, but does still offer less frequent original broadcasts today, as well as an incredibly deep catalog of existing programs, all of which you can listen to anytime at paganstonight.com. But of all my adventures in pagan media, the one most relevant to you watching me now is Magic TV. I said earlier that I had made many television appearances and even attempted to make a low-budget movie. All my life I've had a love of video and had long had a dream of a pagan television station, similar to that Christian TV station founded by the pirate nun. On November 11th, 2005, we started exactly that, a pagan TV station. I am a strong believer in the idea that if we do not like the image mainstream media gives us, then we must ourselves take control of our image. Magic TV began as its own independent platform, and aired that way for several months. However, when we encountered YouTube, we decided that the best course of action would be to establish Magic TV as a YouTube channel, which we did in February of 2006. Magic TV's very first broadcast was the interactive grimoire episode, The Negative Confession. Good evening and welcome to the interactive grimoire. Tonight's question, what is the Negative Confession? The Negative Confession is one of the oldest moral statements made in writing by humankind. Other early Magic TV programming included Pagan Nightly News.
You're watching Pagan Nightly News.
Welcome to this edition of Pagan Nightly News on Magic TV. I'm Ed Hubbard, and I'm going to bring you a special report today on how to sell more of your metaphysical items on eBay. And coming up, you want to know that you want to make more so that you can offer more to your friends, to your family. And we're going to give you 5 easy steps on how to do that.
The Witch Words Glossary.
Magic Circle. The magic circle is used to create sacred space in which to perform ritual.
Athame. The magical knife, or athame, or athame, is an ancient tool of magic. Chalice. The ritual cup used in Wiccan ritual.
Wicca. Wicca is a nature-based pagan religion.
And a number of special reports and classes, including Tarot 101 and Tarot Reversals.
You might want to draw 2 more and see if that helps.
We will now continue our examination of major arcana reversals.
Although we had already been attending the St. Louis Pagan Picnic for many years, we did our first video reporting from the Pagan Picnic of 2006.
Hi, my name is River Higginbotham. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm here at the 14th Annual St. Louis Pagan Picnic.
Also in 2006, we began what would be annual reports from the Corellian Lustrations. And the Fellowship of Isis Convention in Chicago.
Well, I'm Olivia Robertson from Ireland, and it's exciting coming here, especially your air flights are very exciting at the moment, very dramatic, and I love being in Chicago. I'm a co-founder of the Fellowship of Isis, and I'm very old, I'm in my 90th year.
Today, Magic TV has the strongest video record of these and many other events. On July 10th, 2006, we began adding the first degree lesson videos. Most people who have an interest in Wicca come to it first from an interest in magic. Therefore, we will begin these lessons by talking about magic. On January 1st, 2007, we began the Living the Wiccan Life talk show with host Crystal Highcorrell.
Welcome. This is Crystal with today's episode of Living the Wiccan Life. Today I want to talk about the importance of the place where you are and of connecting with the spirits of your place.
By July 11th, 2007, this had evolved into the Living the Wiccan Life reality show, which ostensibly followed our daily adventures at Witch School, but came to focus heavily on interviews and coverage of pagan events.
Hello, I'm Don Lewis of Witch School International and Magic TV, and I'd like to welcome you to our new reality TV program, Living the Wiccan Life. In this program, we're going to share with you our daily activities here at our headquarters. We're here at the St. Louis Pagan Picnic with the very well-known author, Raven Grimanzi.
Hello.
And, well, let me ask you, are you having a good time at the picnic?
Having a great time. First time in Missouri, and really nice community.
Other Magic TV recurring features over the years have included the Chancellor's Prayer Shrine.
Behold, even as this paper burns, so too may the needed energy go out to all those who are in need of it. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we pray that you will join us in sending healing to those who have requested it and those who are in need of it. Healing and blessing energy.
The Corellian Peace Prayer Campaign.
Oro por la paz. Oro por el amor. Oro por la estabilidad. Oro por la nación donde vivo. Oro para que el amor venza sobre el miedo. Y envío amor y paz a todas las personas en el mundo. Yo lo creo, yo lo acepto, yo lo recibo. Por mi voluntad, que así sea.
And monthly crystal web rituals.
May the winds of hope blow, sweeping away despair and sorrow, so that life again may grow, building a better tomorrow. May hope clear the air and end the darkling clouds of fear and pain, and bright beginnings send that we may dare to dream again. May what was dark and overcast be now renewed and once more whole, freed from all limitations past, healed by hope within the soul. Awake now, hope. Spread wings and fly, cleanse and liberate my heart. All things are possible, and I, on wings of hope, shall claim my part.
One show particularly close to my heart is Reverend Don's Vlog. Reverend Don's Vlog began when we moved our headquarters to Salem, Massachusetts in 2010. Initially, it too was meant as a kind of reality show, following the daily adventures of creating and running the World of Witches Museum in Salem. However, the vlog evolved into a question and answer session with viewers, in which viewers would submit questions and I would answer them. Reverend Don's Vlog ran from March 1st, 2010 to September 30th, 2020 before taking a hiatus. I still do the vlogs, but rather infrequently now. But from the 10 years of questions and answers, 4 books have been written, 2 of which are already published and 2 more to come. Some other shows we created for Magic TV over the years include Witch City Soap, Foxgloves Lost and Found, The Art of Therese Pendragon, Elric the Apothecary, and Terry Milton's Stone of the Day. We also have broadcast a number of complete concerts from artists such as Wendy Rule.
Call down a ray of light into my crying heart, my love.
Brian Henke.
Darkness falls, the feast of the dying sun. Let your darkest desires, fires all burn as one.
Mama Gina.
2 feet on the span and it all began to rumble. 3 feet standing now. One was kind of hairy. 4 feet standing there. And 2 were downright scary.
Spiral Dance.
Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, the season that drives the cold winter away. Hail to the summer, hail to the summer, light your bonfire, today is Beltane.
And Martin Wilde.
Who stole the heart of my bonny laddie, all alone and alone,
among others, as well as music and interviews from performers such as Spiral Rhythm,
That's when you hold on tight to the faith inside. Let the memory of the goddess be your guide.
Celtic Mayhem,
and when at last the dawn comes up and the cargo safely stored, like sinless saints to church we go, God's mercy to afford.
Jay and Abby Michaels, the harper and the minstrel, and the Iron Hill Vagabonds,
I'm a rambler and a gambler and a long ways from home. And if you don't like it, you can leave me alone.
among many others. Some of the interviews I have done include, in alphabetical order, the cast of the Altered States TV show: Byron Ballard, Michelle Belanger, Rhiannon Bennett, Janet Barris, Deborah Blake, Phaedra Bonowitz, Z. Budapest, Larry Cornett, Lydia Crabtree, Don Dyke, a.k.a. Vlad, Lori Dakey, Therese DeVoe, Raven Digitalis, Karen Deerhoff, Lilith Dorsey, Ellen Dugan, Selena Fox, Arlene Freed, Donald Frew, Neil Goodman, Penny Goody, Jenna Green, Daniel Greenwolf, River Higginbotham, Joyce Higginbotham, Ellen Everett Hopman, Amber Kay, Azriel Kay, Belladonna Laveau, Eddie Massey, Patrick McCullum, Cassia Morgan, Dorothy Morrison, Mickey Mueller, Maka Nightmare, Elspeth Odbert, Christopher Penzac, Terry Milton the Stone Lady, Star Ravenhawk, Dave and Gail Sassman, John Silversmith, Shel Scow, Michael Starsheen, Kirk White, Yvonne Conway Williams, Alfred Willowhawk, Witch Doctor Utu, Nora Cedarwind Young, Oberon Zell, and, of course, there have been numerous Corellian personalities. Sadly, some of those I've interviewed are no longer with us, including Ted Andrews, Isaac Bonowitz, Ray Buckland, Dina Buta, Don Michael Craig, Raven Gramazzi, Olivia Robertson, and Morning Glory Zell, to name some of the most prominent. We have also covered a wide range of pagan events, some of which I have already mentioned. Some of these were events we covered just once because we happened to be there, like the International New Age Trade Show, or events that only happened once, like the Obama Inauguration Blessing Ceremony from January 19, 2009, or the Chicago Unity Night from April 4, 2009. Others we've covered annually for years. Some of these events are the St. Louis Pagan Picnic, Witches Fest USA, the Fellowship of Isis Chicago Convention, Corellian Lustrations, the Salem Witches Ball, numerous pagan pride days, and the Parliament of the World's Religions. We have had our Magic TV cameras at the Parliament of World's Religions even before the advent of Magic TV itself, with our earliest Parliament video on the channel coming from the 1998 Parliament. We did our first Magic TV livestream programming in 2010. Our very first livestream was a special report from the Salem Witches Ball of 2010. The technology was new and bulky and required a rolling tea table to transport it, but livecast we did. Now, live streaming is much easier, and we do lots of it. One of our biggest Magic TV adventures was crashing PantheaCon 2009. We had contacted PantheaCon to try to make arrangements to film interviews at the event, but not heard back from them. We decided to go anyway and make our case in person. PantheaCon had never allowed filming at their event, but after talking with us, they allowed us to film, partly on the strength of my many years in pagan media. And we did numerous interviews, including some of our most interesting ones. And you can see all of these videos, as well as new ones being produced on a regular basis, at magictv.com. And now, of course, the next big thing is Pagan World TV. Everything I have been involved in before this pales in comparison to the scope of Pagan World TV. This is truly a potential game changer in terms of how the world sees the pagan movement and how we see ourselves. Even more than previous projects I've been involved in, this is a lever that can move the world. I'm very excited for it, and I hope you are as well.